Bill Maher has always been known for pushing boundaries, making sharp observations, and taking jabs at both sides of the political spectrum. But lately, the tone has shifted. It's no longer about being funny or clever, it's about frustration, clarity, and walking away from something he once believed in. What he sees now, especially regarding the way children are being treated in society and how gender discussions are being introduced in schools, is something he can no longer defend. He believes the left has lost its way entirely, morphing from a movement of progress into one of manipulation and moral inconsistency. One of Maher's strongest points is that children are extremely impressionable. They don't have the mental tools or life experience to differentiate right from wrong, appropriate from inappropriate. They're eager to please, eager to conform, and have no baseline for comparison. So when you bombard a 6-year-old with conversations about gender identity, pronouns, and sexual expression, you're not just educating, you're manipulating. You're creating a new norm for them, even when it's wildly inappropriate. He compares this to legal entrapment, getting someone to do something they wouldn't normally do by putting them in an environment where it feels normal or even expected. Maher believes this is exactly what's happening in some classrooms today. And if anyone thinks this isn't real, he says they're not paying attention. A few scrolls on TikTok, and the truth becomes hard to ignore. He points to videos of teachers and activists openly sharing how they push their identity onto kids, sometimes even expressing frustration about not being able to be fully out in schools. These aren't just isolated moments, they're part of a cultural wave. When someone says, "I pledge allegiance to the queers," in a classroom setting or proudly admits to being obnoxiously queer at school as a form of rebellion, it's not just expression, it's performance directed at children. Maher doesn't pull punches. He's disturbed by the sheer level of ideological content being pushed on young minds. He remembers when Disney was mocked for supposedly slipping political messages into their content. Now, he says the same people who dismiss concerns about Disney are up in arms over the exact same tactics being used at Nickelodeon. He calls out the hypocrisy, pointing to how people ignored real issues simply because the critique came from someone on the opposite political side. When Ron DeSantis raised concerns about Disney and children's programming, he was ridiculed as a backwards bigot. But now, similar critiques are coming from liberals and being taken seriously. Why is one acceptable and the other not? Maher says it's all about tribalism. Truth only matters when it comes from the right tribe. He's especially disturbed by how child-centric institutions, schools, media, entertainment are being used as battlegrounds. There's a reason predators historically target places like churches, the Boy Scouts, and schools. That's where the kids are, and Maher is sounding the alarm. It's happening again, just under a different guise. He makes it clear this isn't a partisan rant. He's not some right-wing commentator. He's a lifelong liberal who feels like he's been betrayed by a movement that once stood for honesty and justice. According to Maher, the modern left only stands for one thing: power. If a conservative makes a valid point, they're labeled hateful. If a liberal dares to call out their own side, they're branded a traitor. There's no room for truth unless it fits the narrative. And when it comes to kids, Maher is done playing along. He's furious that children are being dragged into adult issues, whether through hyper-sexualized drag events, school curriculums promoting gender identity theory, or story hours that seem more about adult validation than child development. He's not against drag queens or the LGBTQ+ community. But he questions why events that involve adult performance art are now being catered to children. Sure, kids love a clown, he jokes, but does the clown have to have tits? That one line hits hard. It exposes the absurdity of pretending these events are innocent and educational. Maher argues they're not. Their performances, often exaggerated and sexualized, that have no business being directed at young children. It's not about inclusion or tolerance. It's about ego and attention. He's also had enough of being told that challenging this insanity is hateful. Drag Queen Story Hour, according to Maher, isn't for kids. It's for adults seeking affirmation. And the worst part, everyone knows it. But no one wants to be the first to say it for fear of being labeled a bigot. Even Maher isn't immune to that label, but at this point, he doesn't care. He's more concerned about kids being exploited than he is about fitting in with his own tribe. Maher goes on to highlight just how far things have gone. He talks about seeing footage of a 5-year-old tipping performers at a drag bar with a sign above that reads, "It's not gonna lick itself." And he asks a blunt question, do I have to pretend that's cool just to keep my liberal ID card? For Maher, the answer is a firm no. He draws a clear line between teaching kids tolerance and normalizing adult behavior to the point where it becomes indistinguishable from abuse. He suggests a simple solution. If we want kids to grow up tolerant, then maybe let them meet people with disabilities, with different backgrounds, from different faiths. But instead, the current cultural obsession is with promoting drag and gender identity above all else. He recalls a time when stories for children had simple morals, like Pinocchio. Now, every tale is laced with messages about climate change, gender identity, or some other issue meant to push an agenda. A bunny can't just make a friend anymore, it has to fight oppression along the way. Maher is deeply disillusioned. He feels like what was once progressivism has now mutated into something unrecognizable. Wokeness, he says, isn't just an extension of liberalism anymore, it's become the opposite. Teaching kids not to hate is great. Teaching them not to judge is progress. But at some point, inclusion becomes pressure, and pressuring kids into ideologies they can't even begin to understand is not education, it's exploitation. The issue isn't limited to activists. Maher blames the top of the Democratic Party as well. He mocks Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Gavin Newsom, saying Bernie went from fighting millionaires to becoming one, while Newsom let homes burn to save a fish. AOC, in his words, equates disagreement with misogyny. These leaders, according to Maher, have lost touch with reality. They're not leading, they're pandering. And he's not the only one noticing. He brings up Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who left the Democratic Party to run independently and eventually endorse Trump. Maher sees this as a sign that even deep-rooted Democrats are losing faith. He's not saying he'll become a Republican, but he's also not saying he won't. The very fact that he's leaving the door open is a statement in itself. Maher admits he never bought into the idea of a gay agenda, he thought it was nonsense. But then came the moment when a Disney executive said on record that she was encouraged to inject queerness wherever in her shows. Not for educational purposes or authentic representation, but simply because she could. That was Maher's wake-up call. This isn't about rights anymore, it's about shaping minds. Even Maher, a liberal who has long supported gay rights, says this crosses a line. He jokes about adding queerness to his drink, but then says maybe it's time we stop forcing cultural wars onto children. Let them be kids. Let them grow up before we push adult battles onto their shoulders. For years, conservatives were mocked for saying this was happening. But now, even liberals like Maher are admitting they were right. He talks about the concept of the ick, something someone does that instantly turns you off. Maher says that's what the Democratic Party has become for him. The endless identity politics, the erasure of common sense, the bizarre obsession with gender and pronouns, it all gives him the ick. And it's getting harder and harder for him to stay loyal to a party that treats women like they're expendable and facts like they're optional. He's especially critical of how the left has treated straight men. Being heterosexual, married, and raising kids used to be the norm. Now it's treated as a symbol of oppression. Straight men are blamed for everything from climate change to racism. Maher sees the absurdity in that and refuses to apologize for being a straight man who likes women. He's tired of the shame culture, tired of the guilt trips, tired of the moral grandstanding that collapses under scrutiny. And when he looks at the future, he's not optimistic about where the left is heading. He sees chaos, division, and delusion. He doesn't want to be part of it anymore. He's not defecting because he's angry. He's defecting because the left has abandoned reality. Maher still values truth, logic, and common sense. But those things have become radioactive on the left. He knows people will try to smear him to reduce his message to hate or bigotry. But the reality is, Maher hasn't changed, the party has, and he's finally had enough. He's walking away not because he wants a new label or tribe, but because the one he once proudly stood with has become something he no longer recognizes. He's done defending nonsense, done being polite about absurdity. And if he has to stand alone to do it, so be it. In the end, Bill Maher may not be waving a red flag, but he's certainly not standing under the rainbow one anymore. The modern left has pushed too far, and Maher just snapped the last thread holding him to it.